Anthony Richardson, one of the huge winners of the NFL Scouting Combine, but who are the rest of the winners and losers who helped and hurt their stock the most from the 2023 Scouting Combine on the offensive side of the ball? On today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks again, everybody, for making us your first listen every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL Draft, and your team is covered with a show every single day. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's what we do, Matt. We come at you every single day. So much fun in the offseason. Let's get back into the scouting combine, offensive side of the ball. Yesterday, we already talked a lot about the quarterbacks, especially those first-round quarterbacks, and went a little bit more in depth with their workouts and if they helped or hurt their stock. I think the overall theme of the first-round guys, the top four quarterbacks, Bryce Young, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, none of them hurt their stock, and if anything, only helped their stock, but nobody helped their stock more probably than Anthony Richardson, huge winner of the entire combine.
I felt like Young held serve, was fine.
Yeah.
The other two took a step forward. Good to see them, see the ball come out of their hands, clearly better than the non-top four quarterbacks. So they all went forward, and then Richardson took two giant steps forward. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of the way it works.
Looking at the rest of the quarterback class here, I think a big winner was Stetson Bennett, because I didn't really know where to place Stetson Bennett in the draft. And I still don't really, but I think I'm more confident he's going to be drafted, because I thought at first, and he had some, public intoxication after the national championship win. And, he's 5'11", 192. That's not good. Shortest arms, I think, of the entire combine, maybe 28 and 3/4 inch arm length, which is very short. So he's a stubby, small outlier of a quarterback size wise. Despite all of the, and he's an older prospect too. So I thought, people know his name because he was on national championship teams, but I thought there was a chance he was going to go undrafted. I think he definitely gets drafted now. And I think two reasons why. One is because he threw the ball with a little bit more zip than I expected. I think he hit the 60-mile-per-hour mark too, throwing the football at the combine. And that's inexact. And to be honest with you, Matt, I don't know if you have any insight on this. How do they track that? Is because I don't see a drill where they're throwing it as hard as they can, but people are quoting the miles per hour readings as if they're gospels. Like, this guy's got a stronger arm than I thought. He hit this number, but Will Levis only hit 62 miles an hour. I was like, I don't think that's, if they're just taking miles per hour off of their regular throws, I don't think you can look too much into that. Because there were times when Stetson Bennett, you could tell, was trying to throw it hard. Some of those slants. He's like, I want to show that I can throw the ball hard. But he did, so he maybe a little bit more arm than I expected, big hands, which is key. And then he threw down a 4.67. He was moving pretty good on this 40-yard dash time. So a little bit athletic and an NFL, backup quality arm. I think Stetson Bennett might find a place in the NFL after all. I thought he might've been an undrafted guy going into the combine.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's even a 5th round neighborhood, and I'm sure the Purdy's of the world are helping his cause. And at a minimum, I think he's like a McCarron who won a ton of games at Alabama, and he wasn't always the engine behind it. Mm-hmm. Real quick on the RP or on the mile per hour thing, though, I don't know if they have a gun on all their throws, but they showed it real quickly. There's just a little area one-on-one where there's this huge pad, and they basically just tell the guy to throw it as hard as he can, and the guy sits there with the radar gun like he's a pitcher.
Okay.
I don't know if I put a lot of stack
okay,
in
so
that
they
either.
do have
it's real quick,
straight up speed pitch like you're at the carnival, right? Okay.
Throw your fastballs, but I mean, okay, that's great, but I mean, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me either. But you're right about Bennett. I mean, he's not just an afterthought now. I'm sure people look at him and say, could he be Jimmy G? I don't know about that, but I bet he could be a long-term backup, and I trust him. And in a league where backups are seeing a lot of time, maybe I'm taking him around earlier than I would have.
Another winner, I think, was Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA, and he was a big-time recruit out of high school and kind of never really put it together as a passer, and I was kind of underwhelmed when I watched his quarterback play. He's 6'1.5", 203, but he ran a 4.56, really good 10-yard split, 1.51, which tied for the best in the class, even faster than Anthony Richardson, who threw down a 4.340. Just, really athletic guy. And I think if you're looking for a backup quarterback and you already have an athletic starter and you want a guy that you can develop behind him, I think that's a nice fit for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And really, with all of these quarterbacks, I have no idea what the order of these guys is going to be after the top 4 guys, or who even number 5 is. There's a massive drop off after the top 4, but who's number 5? Could be Bennett, could be Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I don't know. Could be Tanner McKee, could be Malik Cunningham, who threw down a 4.53 40 time as well. So some athletes in this class.
Yeah, there are. I mean, my hunch is Hendon Hooker or McKee are fighting for 5 and 6, and then there's maybe a gap after those guys. Hooker's really interesting to me. He's just kind of out of sight, out of mind. But like a Thompson-Robinson, I think made money at this event without question. I mean, a perfect backup for like a Lamar Jackson or somebody like that, or many fits at this point, or Eagles move on from Minshew, grab him. I mean, that makes all the sense in the world for me. I still think Haener has a little bit of, things going for him. And I kind of like Tyson Badgett as well. I mean, I kind of, again, these are down the line dudes, but Jaron Hall's another one from BYU, I think is in the mix too. So a couple athletic guys, there's a couple smaller dudes that have had some success. So the second or the third, part of this, the tier 3 guys aren't as bad as you think.
I like Jake Haener a lot. In fact, I like him more than I like him quite a bit more actually than Stetson Bennett. He's a little bigger. I think he's got just as good of an arm, and he's a playmaker. But he went to Fresno State, and Stetson Bennett went to Georgia. So I think that's
right.
You might get a nice little backup quarterback late in the draft and Jake Haener. A lot of old quarterbacks too, because of the COVID season and the super duper seniors, and Bennett and Haener and Hooker, and they're all like older than guys that were drafted at quarterback in 2021. So it's hard to know how teams are going to stack those guys up.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's definitely old prospects across the board, but especially a quarterback in this class.
We had some Blazers at running back. Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama, 5'9", 199. He ran a 4.36 40. Some people are actually even somewhat disappointed in Bijan Robinson's 40 time, even though he had a 4.46, which is really I think people forget how fast like a 4.5 right. is in the NFL, right? Like that's crazy speed.
When you're well over 200 pounds and, a big, powerful human being, it's fine. I mean, 40 times for running backs are vastly overrated. But a couple of these smaller dudes, I mean, I thought it was really good for Gibbs. I think he's clearly RB2, and most years he'd be RB1. A-Chain didn't disappoint with the 4.32. I thought Chase Brown from Illinois had a good showing, as did Keaton Mitchell. Those are some risers. Interesting class, though. I mean, like you kind of mentioned Bijan Robinson, like Zack Charbonnet from UCLA ran a 4.53. That's perfect. I mean, to me, that's like a souped up James Conner at 6 foot, 214 pounds, well built, has shown every down capabilities. He's going to get the football a lot, and he's going to produce no matter where he lands.
I think the stark thing to me too, and Bijan Robinson just, holding serve, 4.46, athletic, 37-inch vertical, 10.4 broad jump. But when you see him, when they show the fastest 40 times for the running backs back to back, and you see Devin A-Chain, who's 5'8", 188. He runs a 4.32. He's blazing fast. And then you see Jahmyr Gibbs, who's bigger, but not much bigger. He's 5'9", 199. He runs a 4.36. You're like, wow, those guys are fast. Then Bijan Robinson steps up. It's like, he looks like their fathers. He's 5'11", 215. Like, oh yeah, that's what a running back's supposed to look like, and runs a 4.46. Like, oh yeah, okay, that's a different dude than these other fast guys that are small and skinny and fast. He's got 20 pounds on.
Yeah, I mean, Football Outsiders has this speed score, and it just came out. I haven't looked at it, but it's basically just a combination of how fast you are and how big you are. I mean, a lot of fantasy people will tell you, when you start ranking the running backs, start with weight, because if you're a big, strong guy, you get the football and then you produce. Speed is fine, but, some of these little guys have to have it to be in it, where the big guys really don't.
And I wish a lot of them didn't run the agilities, which is really what I want to see with running backs too. So it's unfortunate that we didn't really get to compare those guys agility-wise. But I'm glad you mentioned Charbonnet, maybe the biggest winner of the running backs, because similar size to Bijan Robinson, over 6 feet, 214 pounds, and ran his 4.53. A little bit of an upright runner, but if you miss out on someone like Bijan early, starting caliber running back and get him on day 2. Who knows? Maybe even 4th round. I don't know how high these running backs are going to go, but Charbonnet more complete than someone like A-Chain for sure, and even someone like Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, yeah. And Tajay Spears was a guy I wanted to bring up too. He was great in the Senior Bowl. I don't know why he wouldn't run a 40 on a fast track like that, but he jumped really well. He looked really good in the drills and that type of stuff too. So there's all shapes and sizes in this running back class. It's a really good group.
Not a very top-heavy wide receiver class. We'll get to the
Mhm.
receivers, offensive linemen, and star-studded tight end class. You can see a lot of guys going early. At maybe more tight ends go in the top 50 to 100 picks than wide receivers, which would be
Possible.
a wild one in the 2023 NFL Draft. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is presented by FanDuel. It's no longer the NFL season, right? But the great thing about FanDuel, the great thing about the NFL is all year long, you've got tons of draft props now and more coming at FanDuel every single day. You can bet on future Super Bowl winners, future Super Bowl MVPs, and of course, the NBA season, getting close to playoff season for the NBA, getting close to tourney time for NCAA basketball. So now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure. Love the website and the app are super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything. Money line bets, point scorers, three-pointers drained in a college or pro game. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlays that are really easy to build, and I love that function at FanDuel. So don't miss out. Get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's go offensive line here. We've done quarterbacks, we've done running backs, and no running back and no quarterback can be truly successful without a great offensive line in front of him, Matt. And sometimes we get all excited about the 40 times and the vertical jumps and how far quarterbacks are throwing the ball and the miles per hour. But the big ones up front are pretty darn important. And this is a really interesting class of offensive linemen where there's no consensus on who the top guy is, but there's a lot of really good players really and deep throughout the class, both tackles and interior offensive linemen.
Without question. I thought it was a good showing overall by the O-linemen. There were some names I didn't really know that stood out to me that I want to go back and look. John Gaines from UCLA, Braden Daniels from Utah are two of those. But so I thought the stars came out to shine. The Broderick Jones, both the Ohio State tackles, the big man didn't really hurt his stock too bad. I mean, is he the most fleet of foot guy there? Of course not. Antoine Harrison from Oklahoma, Skoronski. I mean, all those guys that are in the first round mix, Darnell Wright, none of them to me went backwards. Cody Mock did well too. A lot of the drill work was revealing to me as well. I thought it was a pretty good group overall. Yeah, I learned a lot about the O-line class, and there's a lot of guys I'm going to go back and watch now to find more about. Blake Freeland from BYU had a really nice showing.
There's so many to get to. I
right.
Highlight a couple of names I think were probably losers in this scenario, and that is Cody Mock from North Dakota State and Peter Skoronski that you just mentioned.
You think? Okay.
Skoronski might be the best offensive lineman in the draft, but I think what he did was solidify that he's not going to be tried at offensive tackle in the NFL. That he's an interior guy, which means he's not going to be, a top 10 pick. He's still going in the first round, but 6'4", even 313. So he's at the minimum for height and weight that you want anyway. And then he had the 32 and a quarter arm length. Yeah. If you're under 33 inches, teams just aren't going to try you at offensive tackle. So he might not even get the opportunity to prove he's an outlier and can play tackle. He's a guard. Teams are going to put a G next to his name, not a T.
Yeah, and that costs you money. That costs you draft spots. You're right.
And Cody Mock's coming from North Dakota State anyway, so you have to really prove that you are height, weight, speed specimen. And at 6'5", 302, that's solid, and that's tackle stuff. And he ran a 5.08 40, which is all great. But then the exact same thing, 32 and a third inch arms. So I think teams are going to look at him as an interior offensive lineman as well. So some money lost probably just purely because of arm length for those two players.
Yeah, I think that is noteworthy. Maybe that solidifies it as we thought maybe tackle, but now you're in the OG column. A guy at the top of the OG column I just wanted to mention was Osiris Torrance from Florida. This is not his setting at all, but it wasn't real pretty what he was doing out there. I bet it doesn't kill him because of his style of play. He's probably still a first-round plug-and-play guard, but sometimes you have to just kind of overlook guards not looking good at combines,
Pretty unbelievable, actually, when you have some short arm guys and you're like, oh man, okay, Skoronski is so good, love his tape, but probably has to play inside, shorter arms, not the biggest guy. And then Paris Johnson Jr. and DeJuan Jones, both from Ohio State, the bookend tackles there, walk in with 36-inch Condor wingspans. Like, oh my gosh, not only one, but two, because we saw DeJuan Jones measurements at the Senior Bowl, so we already knew. But a lot of times with juniors, with, like Anthony Richardson kind of blows people away because you weren't really prepared exactly because you didn't have your testing day in the spring before your senior year. A lot of the seniors, the scouts already know what your numbers are kind of going to be. And they're like, oh, watch out. This guy's going to test great, even though his tape's not good. Or, this guy we already know has got short arms. And you always hear those things like, how do you know? And it's like, because they test in the spring before. But for some of the juniors, you don't know. And someone like Paris Johnson Jr. walks in and he immediately is going to go higher than Skoronski, even if you don't like his tape as much, because he's 6'6", 313, and has 36 1/8-inch arm lengths, which is what you want from a prototype offensive tackle.
No doubt. And I watched a lot of his drill work. He's very fluid. He's very athletic. He stood out. I mean, he looks better than the rest. Him and Broderick Jones, to me, are, I don't say prototypical, but pretty close. I mean, the word on Jones out of Georgia was he was going to be 6'4". He came in well higher than that. You just noticed his base, everything he did. He had nice wide base. He might not have been quite as fluid as the Ohio State dude, but he was still phenomenal. I mean, those guys are going to go really high. Like it wouldn't even shock me if one of them's, the 7th overall pick or something like that.
Right. Yeah. And I think if you had to put odds on the order that the offensive linemen go in the draft, I think it's really big for, especially probably more important for linemen with things like wingspan and how big you actually are at the combine and can you move at those sizes. I would say Paris Johnson 1, Broderick Jones 2, then maybe Skoronski 3 if you're talking about what order, how likely they are to go high in the NFL draft.
Yeah, and if I do a third mock, I may have Paris Johnson in the top, 7 or 8. And he's not a perfect prospect, but tackles that do what he does is not easy to come by.
Absolutely. A smaller school guy, Old Dominion, Nick Saldivari.
I like him. Yeah.
Saldivari. It's an interesting one. He had a really good week at the Senior Bowl. He played some interior. He played some guard and some center at the Senior Bowl, but he showed up at 6'6", 318 with 33-plus-inch arms. Decent workout, 1.8 on the 10 and 5.21 in the 40-yard dash. Some teams still might look at him as a tackle too. He's not going to go super high because he comes out of Old Dominion, but I wouldn't be shocked if Nick Saldivari is starting somewhere on an offensive line, whether it be center, guard, or right tackle at some point in the next 2 years in the NFL.
Yeah, his profile of player just seems to stick in the league. Smart, tough, more than athletic enough. So certainly some position versatility. Can fall back into guard if he's not a tackle. He stood out to me at the Senior Bowl. I mean, I might consider him in the 3rd round, let alone if you give him the 4th or 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you mention Darnell Wright yet?
A little, yeah, just briefly, yeah. I mean, he did well.
He did well. 5.01, 40-yard dash at 333 pounds, 6'5", 33, almost 34-inch arms. So that's solid. At Tennessee, he wasn't great at left tackle, but played much better at right tackle. So teams probably only view him as a right tackle only. So if, late round 1, you're looking for a pure right tackle, Darnell Wright might be your guy. And he might have solidified himself as a first rounder.
I don't think he gets out of the 1st round. I really don't. I mean, there's so many teams that could use him that are playoff type teams, the Bills, maybe the Chiefs, teams like that. And he might be long gone. I've seen him mocked as high as 17 to the Steelers.
If you're wondering why Ohio State was pretty good, so the bookend tackles, we've seen their quarterback here. We're talking about it. We're going to talk about their wide receiver in a second as well with the wide receiver group of the combine. But Luke Weipler, center from Ohio State, 6'3", 303, ran 5.14, but a really nice shuttle. And for especially interior offensive linemen, I always go to the shuttle time, and he had one of the best shuttle times of any of the offensive linemen at the combine with 4.53. And when you get under 4.5, it's a ridiculous telling trait to have that short area quickness for an offensive line, especially for a center or a guard, and tackles as well for success in the NFL. When you look at the list of fastest 40 times and you see a bunch of busts at wide receiver and corner, Go look at the fastest shuttle times for offensive linemen, and you just see great player
hit
after
after
great
hit
player.
after hit. Yep.
Yep.
That's a great call. I wonder if he can threaten Tippmann or John Michael Schmitz, who also had a good shuttle, as the top center off the board. If not, I do think there's a top 3 that all project as starters. It's a great call. It's one of the first things I look at. Interior O-line, short shuttles. And I mentioned John Gaines from UCLA, but he was the best. 4.45 for him was remarkable. Didn't know much about him, but he's really boosted stock by doing that as well.
Actually, looking at Gaines, just a tad bit quicker, a little taller than Weipler, but very similar across the board, just from athletic testing perspective.
Yeah, did really well. So I'm warming up to this O-line class too, which you don't like to overreact too much to combine weekend, but you definitely learn a lot, or you get tuned on to some guys you need to find out more about.
Right. And there's no top 5 slam dunk guys like there have been in years past, but there's some depth here. And I think you're going to find some starters into day 2 and maybe even high day 3, some solid prospects across the board along the offensive line.
Yeah. And a lot of guys showed well in drills.
Next, let's talk pass catchers, wide receivers, and tight ends. Who won money, who lost money at the NFL Combine next? I want to start with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Who did not run a 40-yard dash, which might be telling. But at this point, I don't care anymore because his production is ridiculous. His ability was really unquestioned, really good tape, the best tape of any wide receiver in this draft class. And then we talked about the shuttle time for some of the offensive linemen. Oh, my gosh. His agility drills that he did run at the Combine, it was like mic drop. I'm not going to run a 40 because I'm going to go out there and put up elite of the elite numbers in the 3-cone and the short shuttle. Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State, 6'1.5", 196 pounds, not big hands, not long arms or anything like that, but 6.57 in the 3-cone. Anything under 7 flat is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And then 3.93 short shuttle. The only guy I think in the entire Combine that went under 4 seconds in the short shuttle. 4.2 is ridiculous. We're talking sub 4 is crazy. So you talk about a guy who can catch in traffic, can get open, catch the football, make plays. Jackson Smith and Jigba is your guy. I almost don't care if he runs a 4.7. And to be honest with you, if he thought he could run 4.5s, he should have run 4.5s and then just waited for his name to be called in the first round.
Yeah, right. I mean, Ohio State's track is legendarily fast, but so is this Indy one. Why not? I mean, he was so good at everything. I mean, his drills were number 1. His routes were number 1. His change of direction, number 1. And it really wasn't even close. And there was a lot of good receivers here. He's easily my number 1 receiver, even if he runs a 4.75. I mean, I just don't care. He is what he is. He's Keenan Allen. I'll take it all day long,
I think Keenan Allen is a good comp. Now, if he does at his pro day run a 4.7, maybe he's more the Jarvis Landry comp. And could he fall if that's the case? Will teams really care? But the fact that he didn't run his 40 is pretty telling because it's probably not fast.
No.
So that's sort of the sliding scale. If he gets anywhere in the 4.5, slam dunk first rounder, probably first receiver off the board. If it starts to get Anquan Bolden, Jarvis Landry 4.7s, then you might start to get a little bit worried about where he might go. I would have no problem drafting him just about anywhere still because I don't care. But, that's the question. Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, is he a slot-only guy? Can he win on the outside would be the questions as to why teams might draft another player over him.
Yeah, but boy, I mean, he's just a really good player. I mean, if his job is to get open, he does it extremely well.
I got a small school sleeper for you here, Matt, out of Princeton. Andre Yoivas. Yoivas, I believe is how you pronounce it. 6'3", 205. He ran a 4.43 in the 40, put up 19 bench press reps, 6.85, so another sub 7 3-cone, and 4.12, which is a lightning shuttle, and 39-inch vertical. So jumps were there. Top speed was there. He showed he could bench press 19 reps. So size, weight, short area, long speed. He's got it all. A little bit of a body catcher. Tape's not great, though. But the best receiver at Princeton. So not terrible. Just I wanted to see, and he's got small hands too. Sub 9-inch hands. So I don't know if he's a sleeper superstar in the NFL or just a guy who washes out of training camp. But man, athletically testing wise, he's got everything for you.
Yeah, he's got a sprinter background. He does have size. You mentioned, I mean, Princeton, he's a smart dude, of course, but considered a hard worker. A guy like him might be able to be active on game day as a special teamer, a gunner, something like that while he learns his trade. Maybe he's one of 4 receivers that dresses. So I think he's in a good situation. There's a lot of receivers I'm warming up to in this class too. I mean, it's easy to say it's a bad receiver class, and I think it is compared to the last few, but that doesn't mean there's not 20 guys that are interesting. Like some of the, just look at the 40s, Trey Palmer, Darius Davis are at the top. Those guys, and Marvin Mims is a guy I like quite a bit. So I think the day 2 into maybe round 5 neighborhood for receivers is pretty strong.
Is this the small, are we really going this way, or is this just a weird draft class with tiny wide receivers, Matt? Because I'm kind of blown away by how small so many of these wide receivers are. Is this just basketball on grass, and this is the way things are going, or a class that is a little bit kind of silly as far as their size goes? And we're talking about first round prospects in a lot of mock drafts that are 173 pounds, 176 pounds, 171 pounds. And I don't know if every team is going to be super interested in guys that are really that small, as fast as a lot of them are. And by the way, here's a good stat for you. And Jordan Addison's official,
he was who I was going to bring up, right?
His official 40 time ended up coming in at 4.49, but at 5'11", 173, you better be blazing fast. And here's a stat: his unofficial was 4.55. And if that stuck, it would have been the second slowest 40 time, even at 4.5s. The second slowest 40 time for a wide receiver under 175 pounds in 20 years.
Wow.
So even running 4.49 for Addison, you think, oh, that's fast. At 171 pounds, that's still not that fast. You can't just win with pure speed in the NFL like you can in the college game.
No, I mean, clearly the way the game is going, they don't get beat up at the line of scrimmage, spread, blah, 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 blah. The smaller receivers are more prevalent, and they're more, they get more of a shot. There's no doubt about it. But I do think this is an unusually small class. I was going to bring up Addison. Tank Dell's another one. He's tiny. Josh Downs is really shifty and agile, but he's a pure slot. He didn't run as good as you'd want for a smaller dude as well. Zay Flowers is intriguing, but he's really small. So it is a small class. What's his face? The TCU dude, Johnston, is really the only prototypical looking receiver that's in the first couple round mix.
Yeah. So I think just by being that probably made himself some money at the combine. Oh, cool. We got somebody that's 6'2". All right. So we got a real, receiver for those teams that like size.
Mm-hmm. And he didn't do much, but he did run his gauntlet. And a lot of people worried about drops, and he looked really good doing the gauntlet. I mean, put as much stock as you want in that, but that's one of the takeaways from him.
One last winner for me at wide receiver, that was Ole Miss's Jonathan Mingo. And 6'1", almost 6'2", 220. He's a physical player, ran 4.46. I think he had the most or second most bench press reps at the combine for wide receivers. Had a 39.5-inch vertical. He's got some good tape. Wasn't super duper productive, but kind of in the AJ Brown mold coming out of Ole Miss, where they, you have a guy who's like, oh, is he a big slot in the NFL? Because they only play in the slot. Jackson Smith and Jigba could be that as well. Justin Jefferson went through that. I was like, I think there might be more there in the NFL than there was in college for Jonathan Mingo.
That's a great call. I've thought that for a while now after doing some homework on him, and I think it helps him too that he looks the part as well. He's a much more physical, well put together guy than a lot of these dudes. Two names I want to throw out there too that really stood out at the Senior Bowl were Jaden Reed from Michigan State and Wilson from Stanford. I think they solidified that they're legit here. So it's a mid-round receiver draft to me, third round area,
Absolutely. Yeah, you're getting the complementary pieces, the slot guys, the speedy players, the number 2s, the number 3s, the number 4 type wide receivers in this class.
Curious if they'll be overdrafted as a whole, this class.
Right, because everyone needs them. I mean,
everyone needs them, yeah.
Everybody needs a wide receiver. Or maybe teams getting more calls and more offers for trading, true starting wide receivers in the NFL this offseason as well.
I would shift my focus to grabbing a tight end.
It's top heavy and it's deep. My first big winner of the combine for tight ends is Iowa tight end Sam Laporta, 6'3", and 3/8, 245 pounds, ran a 4.59. He had ridiculous short area testing times as well, sub-7 in the 3 cone, 35-inch vertical, 10.3 in the broad jump, and he shows all that on tape with his quickness and ability to get open. So if you're looking for that tight end who's can give you some effort in the blocking game, he's not an extension of the offensive line or anything, but his ability after the catch, get open, ball skills. I really like Sam Laporta as a guy who you don't have to draft in the first round either.
Right. And I'm putting my top 5 together. This morning I was doing tight ends, and we'll talk about it down the road. And I considered him, but he didn't make my top 5. And I really have nothing bad to say about the guy. He had a great showing. This tight end class enamors me. I think it's clearly the best position in the draft. I could see 8 to 10 starters in the league from this class 2-3 years down the road. I could see a dozen of them getting drafted pretty high. I'm glad you mentioned Laporta. And, we talked about Richardson, the quarterback, obviously from Florida, saying, an all-time great combine we were talking about yesterday. But Zack Kuntz from Old Dominion had the best tight end workout of all time too, like Spark Score and weight adjusted. So some of these guys just lit it up, and it's a good group.
I mean, we're talking about like NBA level athleticism
right.
for Kuntz, like just unbelievable workout numbers across the board. Tall too. He must have been he could have been an all-time volleyball player. 6'6.5", 255.
Right. It's crazy.
Big hands, 34-inch arm length. He ran a 4.55 in the 40, 23 reps in the bench. So it's not just like some skinny guy who's not strong either. 6'8'7" 3-cone, 4.12 in the shuttle, and then a 40-inch vertical to go with it. So leaper size, short area quicks at 6'6", ridiculous.
And I heard this, and then I went back and confirmed it. Is Penn State, I guess, apparently offered Freiermuth, Pitts, and Kuntz, and said, we have 2 spots for tight ends. The first 2 of you 3 to take them, we'll gladly accept your commitment. Freiermuth signed, and then Kuntz signed, and then they said, hey, Pitts, you can come here as a DN. Pitts is from Florida. He's like, I'm not going to go be there as a DN. and so that was potentially their 3 tight ends. Kuntz then transfers to Old Dominion. I think he had a hard time beating out Freiermuth, who's pretty good too. So, I mean, that's the backstory. How does a guy like this end up at Old Dominion? Well, that's how.
Yeah, so he wasn't completely forgotten.
No.
By the way, Old Dominion, I can't imagine there's many drafts where they get 2 guys drafted.
The lineman too. We talked about him. I forgot about that. Very nice.
Okay. Big winner has to be Darnell Washington. Made the one
we have to bring him up.
Field work, 6'6" and 5'8", 264. Massive 11-inch hands, long arms. Ran a 4.64 at that size, and a really nice short shuttle as well, 4.08. I think he might end up getting overdrafted. Matt, to be honest with you, when you look at first-round tight ends, it's not a great hit rate in the NFL. No. And I think Darnell Washington's, if we look back in a few years, he might be a superstar. Might be like, we drafted a lot of traits there, and maybe he's not quite that guy.
Right. It's a possibility. I mean, I might be overreacting to this tight end class because history shows they either take a while or the highly drafted ones don't hit. And a lot of the mid-round Kelsey Kittles end up being the best of the group, But boy, another thing about tight ends, though, is traits matter maybe more than receivers, to be honest with you. I mean, if you have combine numbers at tight end, it means more to me than it does at wide receiver or running back for sure. And boy, does Washington have unbelievable combine numbers. I mean, his hand size, 40, he's a great blocker already. He made money. I mean, as did a lot of these tight ends. And Michael Mayer, I don't think hurt himself. He was just fine.
He was just kind of like, don't really stand out. He was sub 250 pounds too. He's still one of the better, more complete tight ends in this class. 6'4.5", 249, ran a 4.7 flat. So, solid, but didn't wow you or anything. Luke Musgrave's having a great season, by the way. A great draft season. Was the best, one of the best players, might have been the best player at the entire Senior Bowl, and then comes to the combine and shows off his size and speed, just under 6'6", 6'5" and 7/8, 253 pounds, and ran a 4.61, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I adore him. I was just watching him run at the Senior Bowl and everything he's done here. And he was injured a lot last year. So not a ton of tape to go off of, but Musgrave to me could be a stud.
And speaking of injuries, we didn't get to see guys like Dalton Kincaid work out because of injuries. Right. 6'3.5", 246, so a little bit smaller. So he's going to have to throw down some times, I think, when he does test at Utah's Pro Day.
No doubt. That's important for him because it's a highly competitive situation. Tucker Kraft, Josh Wiley, a Shoemaker from Michigan. You mentioned Laporta. I mean, there's so many good tight ends in this class.
Such a great class, which means there's going to be value later in the draft at tight end. There's going to be multiple starters from this class, I think.
No doubt. I like
it. I had to be a holder, too, of what style you're looking for. And none of these guys are crazy good blockers. So I think that'll help guys like Mayer and the more complete players that are out there. Like, okay, well, you got to be able to block sometimes too. You can't just be a split out wide receiver. I'll just draft a wide receiver.
Right. No. So I think Mayer and Washington benefit from being in line wise, it'll mix it up and, are good at it.
All right, a lot more coming this offseason. Matt Williamson's latest mock draft. We've got positional rankings. We've got the start of free agency. All the latest news around the NFL. Thanks so much for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen. Back tomorrow, right here on the next P&W.